The Hitchhiker is a series that I only know by reputation, and still only vaguely. It ran on HBO from 1983 to 1987, before transitioning over to the USA Network and running from 1989 to 1991. The premise is that there's this dude, the titular hitchhiker, and he wanders from place to place, and sometimes characters from that week's episode interact with him. Sometimes he's lingering somewhere just out of sight to give the audience little speeches about what the characters did wrong. Anyway, it's not Shakespeare, it's just a simple hook for telling anthology stories. The first ever episode of The Hitchhiker is called Shattered Vows. It features cocky 80s Bruce Greenwood who drives past the hitchhiker, and then the hitchhiker says some stuff.
Hey! Sorry, I guess I should look where I'm going. I'd like to give you a lift, but I'm turning at the next light.
Jeff Boder's not a bad guy. Ambition can take people places they wouldn't usually go. No matter how good a skier he is, this time he's in water way over his head.
Greenwood is a rich lady's pool boy or water skiing instructor or something, and now he's going to marry her for her money. Classic love story. He's also got a gypsy relative who gives him a cake topper, which may or may not be cursed, as a wedding present, and I'm sure that's not at all important. For a moment I was shocked by the appearance of nudity and cougar sexing going on, but then I remembered that this was an HBO show. My brain was convinced that this was always on the USA Network. Anyway, life is grand for old Brucey Greenwood, but then his soon-to-be stepdaughter shows up and invites him to get a head start on 21st century porn.
Having pleasant thoughts?
Despite this detour, the wedding goes on as scheduled. During the reception, the daughter proposes murdering her mother so that they can split her trust, and the cursed cake topper does not like this one little bit.
I can't breathe.
Oh, you're burning up.
You're really sweating. Are you all right?
The skin's burning up. You feel it?
No.
Let's get some fresh air. Jackie!
Greenwood somehow immediately figures all this out and accelerates plans to murder his new wife. Now, you'd think his fatal mistake in all this would be telling the stepdaughter the whole plan, including how he can kill her mother with the cake topper. But she actually doesn't betray him at all. Instead, after their plan to kill the mother succeeds, Waldo from Twin Peaks in an early role gets out of its cage and claws the statue, which leads to Greenwood literally shattering before the hitchhiker returns to tell us that he had reached for the sky and that's how he got burned or something.
Jeff Boder wanted too much. Much too much. He tried to step way up and stumbled into hell.
What a silly thing this was. Now, before I get to the next two episodes, there's an important piece of trivia to note here. In the first season, the character of the hitchhiker was played by Nicholas Campbell. Later seasons have the character played by Paige Fletcher, and at some point they reshot scenes from the first season with Fletcher so audiences wouldn't be confused going forward. Here's how the first encounter with Greenwood plays out with the two different actors.
Jeff Boder's not a bad guy, but ambition can take people places they wouldn't usually go. No matter how good a skier he is, well, this time he's in water way over his head.
Episode 2 is called When Morning Comes, and the re-edited Paige Fletcher version is the only one that still seems to exist. You've got this guy bopping down the road, and he spies the hitchhiker. He picks up the hitchhiker, and immediately starts telling the hitchhiker all about his sexual needs.
Oh yeah, girls. Not that I don't love my wife. Great, my kids too. Yeah, and that's what I really left out. She knows. But the chicks? Yeah, she knows. Not who, when, or where. She knows. She understands my needs.
That's fun. They drive all night, and then the dude drops the hitchhiker off at a gun store, as you do, and the hitchhiker has this to say.
Bob Ames thinks he's got the world on a string. Thinks he's got everyone figured out. But the sky is charged tonight. And it can sometimes boil the blood and fog the mind.
We learn that there's an escaped lady convict who likes stabbing dudes in the neck, and when dude arrives at his destination, he finds a random lady, mostly nude, hanging out in his cabin. True to this show's porn aspirations, they're boning moments later. Immediately afterwards, the radio reminds us that there's a killer lady on the loose, although this is the first time our dude here has heard the news.
She was incarcerated for 5 counts of murder for having cut her lovers' throats with kitchen knives. Brown is 5'7" tall.
He flips out, convinced that the lovely lady he just made sweet love to is the killer. She claims not to be. They stalk and hunt each other for a while until she's gunned down by a prison guard.
She escaped from the Raleigh State Mental Institution.
Turns out she was innocent after all, as the prison guard turns out to be the real killer. Twist. Episode 3 is called Split Decision, and unlike the last one, the original Nicholas Campbell version is the only one I could find. Jake here is a lousy salesman who drives around town to clown music, apparently.
Hey, Pilgrim, do you know how to get to Doppler Way? Yeah, your pal.
Here goes Jake McElhaney. He thinks he's a charming sort of a guy. But charm can sometimes fool the charmer. And that's where the danger lies.
What? Jake is eager to convince Braless Lady here to sell her house, but we the audience soon learn that there's 2 of these ladies, played by sisters Audrey and Judy Landers, who, I don't know why they're famous, but I certainly know who they are. I mean, they've been in things, but there's just not one thing you can point to. True 80s kids know who they are. Anyway, this episode is a bit silly, as you might have guessed.
How's your closet space?
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, lots of room here.
Oh, he wasn't fazed by that bear at all. For some Penthouse Forum letter kind of reason, both sisters independently end up seducing him, but as was alluded to earlier, they don't like to share. So this happens.
Yes, we both want you.
Well, then that's the solution. You can both have me. Look, there's more than enough Jake McElhaney to go around.
We were hoping you'd see it that way. Watch the birdie. Smile. I think you're gonna like this picture.
And that's the end of the first season of The Hitchhiker, which, as you've seen so far, is kind of all over the place thematically. However, it's got that 80s charm to it and promises famous faces popping up here and there, so I'm gonna stick with this one. I've had fun so far.
Jake McElhaney would have done anything for a sale. Now he's a permanent fixture in the garden. I guess if the Packard sisters ever do sell, he'd go with the house.
Also, as a man who enjoys seeing a naked female body from time to time, this is a show that delivers. If I had had HBO as a kid, this show would have been my secret jam. But anyway, don't change that channel, and also like and subscribe and all that, because coming up next, we're back to 1985 for the good stuff. Stay tuned.